My name is Selah Voss, 29 years old. I should have known what kind of night it would be the second Sarah chirped that we simply must do Thanksgiving at the Grand Metropolitan. She loved the way the name sounded in her mouth, like a gold card flicked on marble. Loved it almost as much as she loved reminding me that I was the practical sibling. For 5 years, she's repeated that word at family gatherings the way some people pass salt. Practical, as in not brilliant. Practical, as in small. She'd become a pharmaceutical sales rep and managed to turn that into the family's favorite success story. At some point, my parents stopped comparing and just applauded. When she booked the table, her voice came honeyed with faux concern. "Are you sure you're comfortable here, Selah? I know prices like this aren't exactly friendly to a little freelance graphic design thing." She always said thing like it had lint on it. The Grand Met, cream marble floors polished to a gloss, chandeliers that rained light, place settings so precise they could be measured, was chosen because she thought it would make me squirm. That was the plan. Invite me to a room that measures worth in car leases and watch me shrink. I arrived in a black dress that didn't announce anything, flats I could walk a mile in, hair pinned cleanly away from my face. Nothing designer, nothing to feed. Still, I felt her inventorying me from across the lobby before I reached the host stand. Dad was in the suit he bought for Sarah's award ceremony last year, shoulders squared like he was posing for a brochure. Mom wore pearls and an expression that kept flitting around the dining room, worried someone might ask if we belonged. Kevin, younger by 4 years and powered by Wi-Fi, was already shooting everything for his story. The soaring ceiling, the gloved hands lifting silver cloches, the way the waiter folded napkins like origami. His captions practically wrote themselves. # family goals, # grateful, # elevated. At the table, Sarah projected loudly enough for neighboring diners to harvest the performance. "Can you believe Selah wanted Denny's?" she said, smiling to signal she was teasing, not tearing. I had to explain this is a family celebration, not a pit stop. I hadn't suggested Denny's. I'd suggested home, 2 days of Mom in an apron, her famous turkey and stuffing scenting the walls, the way it used to when we were kids. "We should celebrate somewhere that reflects where we are now," Sarah had insisted, and everyone nodded as if success needed chandeliers to be real. Courses arrived like choreography. Sarah recited her latest sales numbers, then mentioned her new BMW lease as if it were a promotion in and of itself, then floated a condo in the trendier quadrant of downtown. Kevin shared about a marketing title upgrade and that he planned to propose at Christmas. He said it casually, but held out his hand like someone waiting to catch applause. Mom and Dad asked follow-ups, eyes bright, dinnerware softly clinking in approval. Then the spotlight shifted to me and the temperature dropped 1/2 a degree. "So, Selah," Dad said, dissecting his prime rib with the solemnity of a surgeon, "how's the, what do you call it, graphic design?" His tone carried the careful patience of someone ready to deliver advice disguised as kindness. "It's going well," I said, drinking water, feeling the coolness steady me. "Busy." "Busy with what?" Sarah leaned in, fork suspended, voice sugar sharp. "Anything we'd recognize? Logos for, like, household names?" Her eyebrows did the work her words didn't. I could have listed accomplishments. Fortune 500s, rebrands that doubled revenue, awards that arrived in heavy envelopes and were currently propping up a shelf in my apartment because I hadn't gotten around to hanging them. I didn't. "A mix," I said. "Websites, identity systems, campaigns." Kevin and Sarah traded the look they'd been rehearsing for years, the one that pretends to be a shrug, but isn't. "Well, that's nice," Mom said, which is Midwestern for not impressive. "It's important to have hobbies." "Hobbies?" Kevin laughed without looking up from his phone. "Mom, she thinks that's her career." 5 years ago, a comment like that would have sent me to the bathroom in tears, fumbling with paper towels and mascara. Now I just felt the moment pass like a wave that didn't reach my ankles. I put my fork down, picked it up again, ate another bite of salmon. Sarah didn't like silence that didn't center her. "There's nothing wrong with side projects," she resumed, warming to the script. "But at some point you have to think about stability, benefits, retirement, adulthood." She gestured at the room, at the crystal and cut beef and white glove service. "This is what success looks like, Selah. You can't build a life on vibes." Dad nodded, approving the thesis. You're 29 now. Time to get serious. His tone had the sonorous weight of a sermon delivered from behind a lectern. Maybe we could help you network, Sarah offered, face turned tender the way a cat tilts its head. I know people in marketing. Entry-level stuff, sure, but you could work your way up. Entry-level, at 29, after 7 years of running my own thing. I kept my voice even. I appreciate that. Kevin kept producing content, flicking through filters for his dessert even before it arrived. Look how fancy this place is, he said to the table like we were his followers. People are going to lose it. We are living the high life, Sarah corrected, and then, a beat later, like a knife carefully placed. Well, most of us. She didn't look at me, which made the cut feel better rehearsed. By the time dessert menus landed, the conversation had drifted to promotions, kitchen renovations, Q4 strategies for pharmaceutical territories. Sarah scanned the numbers and performed shock. $14 for cake? Wild. Mom shifted in her chair, discomfort showing. Sarah, sweetheart, are you sure about covering all this? The question was gentle, worried about the right thing and the wrong thing simultaneously. Don't worry, Sarah said, straightening with visible pleasure at her role as provider. When you're successful, you take care of your people. Her eyes flicked to me and lingered, sweetly. Right, Seela. I recognize the test. Agree and bow, or bristle and break the spell. Right, I said, mild as a winter sky. Be honest, she said, theatrically lowering her voice. You couldn't eat here on your own, could you? The table went briefly still. Kevin paused. Mom and Dad looked at me like this was a teachable moment where I might finally ask for help. A dozen truths stacked behind my teeth like plates, any one of which would have shattered the scene. I could have told them I knew what the kitchen looked like at 2 a.m., what the maitre d' kept in his desk drawer, which server was studying night classes, and who'd need the shift covered when finals hit. Instead, I said, You're probably right. Sarah's victory smile arrived on schedule. I'm not trying to be mean, she said, which is what people say right before they are. It's just time to be realistic. Some people are built for big outcomes. Some people are steady. Steady's good, Dad echoed, approving the euphemism that demoted me with a pat on the head. Kevin was photographing his chocolate souffle when it came, angling it toward the chandelier. This is going to get so many likes, he murmured. Tag the hotel, Sarah said. Let people know where the Voss family dines. She adjusted her posture for his camera, draping an arm over her chair, smiling the smile she saves for strangers, and mirrored. Elevators. Seela, get in, Kevin called. Come on. I'm fine, I started, but Sarah waved it away. She hates photos, she explained to Kevin, like I wasn't there. Probably doesn't want people to think she's out of her depth in places like this. The words were cigar smoke curling through crystal air, slow and fragrant, and impossible to ignore. Even Mom's face folded. Sarah, she reprimanded softly. I'm being honest, Sarah insisted, then softened her voice like a silk ribbon. Seela, you know I love you. But part of love is helping people face reality. Look at these prices. Really look. This entree costs more than you make in a week with your little projects. Dad nodded, finding the paternal rhythm. That's not an attack, sweetheart. It's a wake-up call. He leaned back with the authority he used when delivering tax advice. Stop pretending you're thriving. It grew very quiet in our corner, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of other people's bracelets and the sound of linen being unfolded at another table. Years ago, I would have cracked open and poured myself out for them. Proofs, explanations, the whole apologetic song. Instead, I nodded once. You're right. The reaction they'd planned on, tears, anger, pleading, didn't arrive, and because it didn't, the scaffolding of their lecture sagged. Sarah blinked, a little off balance. Well, good. Accepting reality is healthy. The first step is admitting you have a problem, Kevin added, a reflexive jab he probably thought was wit. I was preparing to stand and excuse myself. Bathroom, powder my nose, something cinematic, when a figure stepped into the edge of my vision. Navy suit, perfect tailoring, shoes that had never met a scuff. He moved with the kind of purpose that causes waiters to dissolve from his path without looking like they moved at all. Marcus Chin. I knew the weight of his attention, the way sailors know weather. The table noticed him the way a room notices a shift in lighting. Sarah straightened, smoothing her napkin, likely assuming he was on his way to congratulate her on taste. Dad adjusted his tie. Mom's hand found her pearl clasp. Kevin tilted his phone, already prepared to catch the moment where the Grand Metropolitan itself blessed our presence. Marcus approached and let his gaze take in the table, one practiced sweep, and then settled, without a stumble, on me. He opened his mouth to speak. Marcus's smile was the kind of professional warmth that could light a room without ever breaking into true intimacy. He inclined his head politely to the others, then addressed me with absolute clarity. "Ms. Voss, your usual ownership suite is ready." For a half-breath, the entire table stilled as if the air itself had crystallized. Sarah's fork froze mid-air, a bite of chocolate cake trembling. Kevin's phone slipped, screen lighting the tablecloth as it clattered. Mom blinked too slowly, pearls glinting in the chandelier light. Dad's jaw stopped mid-chew, his knife and fork poised but suspended. Marcus continued, apparently oblivious to the shock detonating in front of him. "The quarterly reports are waiting for your review, and the architect still needs confirmation on the executive floor renovations. The head chef also asks if you'd like the usual wine selection prepared for tomorrow's board dinner, or if you prefer to review new options." He glanced at the others, polite but detached. "I hope everyone's enjoying their Thanksgiving meal." Sarah's breath came out in a strange, clipped laugh that never quite formed. Kevin looked between Marcus and me like he'd misheard a foreign language. Dad finally swallowed, then cleared his throat with authority. "I think there's some mistake," he told Marcus. "You said ownership?" Marcus looked gently puzzled. "Yes, sir. Ms. Voss owns the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. She has for nearly 3 years now. But of course, if family time takes precedence, I can reschedule the architect for tomorrow morning." He turned back to me, tablet in hand. "Shall I confirm?" "Yes," I said evenly. "Tomorrow morning works. And keep the usual wine." "Excellent." Marcus nodded, tapped his screen, then gave the table one last courteous smile. "Enjoy your evening." He withdrew with the same effortless stride that had brought him. Silence. Not just around us, though the whole dining room seemed dimmer, but in the space between my family's breaths. The silence of people trying to reorder reality. Sarah was the first to break. "Own?" The word was brittle. "As in, own the hotel?" "Yes," I answered simply. "The whole hotel?" Kevin's voice cracked. "Yes." Mom's hands pressed together like she was steadying herself against an invisible wind. "Selah, honey, how? When?" 3 years ago, I said. The previous owners were looking to sell. The numbers worked. Dad blinked hard, already doing math behind his eyes. "Selah, this is a multi-million-dollar property." "Multi-million is accurate," I said calmly. He sat back, his face a ledger scrolling. Sarah's expression shifted through stages. Confusion, denial, indignation, and then something jagged. Fear. She looked at my black dress like it was a disguise she hadn't cracked until this moment. "But your apartment," she stammered. "Your clothes, your car." Her voice softened with incredulity. "You live like—" "Someone who doesn't have money," I finished. She nodded quickly. "I prefer simplicity." Kevin barked a laugh, too sharp, meant to cover his unraveling. "Selah, you let us think you were broke." "I never said I was broke," I corrected. "You assumed." The words settled like dust after an implosion, choking but undeniable. Mom's eyes shone with something between embarrassment and grief. "But why wouldn't you tell us?" "Because," I said, voice steady, "you never asked what I actually did. You decided before I opened my mouth." No one answered. They didn't have to. Marcus reappeared, precise as a clock. In his hands, a slim leather folio. He set it beside me. "Apologies again, Ms. Voss. The mayor's office called to confirm your attendance at next week's tourism board meeting. Also, Forbes would like to finalize your feature interview." His tone softened by a single degree. "Do you prefer they contact your direct line?" "Forbes?" Dad repeated, the word heavy as stone. "Yes," Marcus said smoothly. "For their profile on leaders in hospitality. Ms. Voss was interviewed previously, but they'd like a follow-up." He inclined his head again. "I'll let you finish your evening." As Marcus left, Dad leaned forward, voice low, urgent. "Selah, you're being featured in Forbes?" "It's a minor piece," I said, brushing it aside. "Nothing huge." Kevin's phone had reawakened in his palm. His fingers flew. "Oh my God, here you are." His face paled. "Williams Hospitality Group? That's You? I nodded. It says you own 4 hotels, a restaurant group, some resort thing. His voice cracked again. The business has expanded, I said. Mom looked at me like I was a stranger she was still deciding whether to trust. Why didn't you tell us? The answer had lived inside me for years. Because watching how you treated me when you thought I was small told me everything I needed to know. Her lips parted, but no words came. Sarah's voice finally returned, harsh with desperation. But we're family. We should have known. Should you? I asked softly. When was the last time you asked me about my work? Genuinely asked, not as a prelude to a lecture. The silence that followed was the most honest response they'd ever given me. Dad shifted uncomfortably, searching for safer ground. Sela, if you own this place, if these numbers are real, what does that make you worth? Comfortable, I said. Comfortable? His eyes drilled. This hotel must generate millions annually. It does well, Kevin muttered, scrolling furiously. This article calls you a rising star in luxury hospitality. It says you built an empire. His eyes darted to me. An empire, Sela. Empire is too strong. I smiled faintly, but we've done well. Sarah pressed both hands to the tablecloth, her nails leaving crescents in the fabric. All this time, we thought you were struggling, and you let us. Yes. The acknowledgement dropped like lead. You lied, she whispered. No, I let you believe your version. Her mouth closed around nothing. Dad, still chasing numbers, murmured, What revenue are we talking, roughly? Last year, 42 million, I said, level. Revenue, not profit. Mom gasped faintly. Kevin swore under his breath. Sarah shook her head, eyes burning. I've been patronizing you, acting like I was the one saving you. I met her gaze, and yet here we are. The weight of it pressed down on all of them, but I didn't lean back. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small at this table. Kevin was the first to break the silence, but his voice lacked its usual smirk. 42 million revenue. He dragged the word out like it hurt his tongue. Sela, that's not just doing well. He stopped, staring at me like he was still waiting for the punchline. Mom's hand, trembling slightly, reached across the table and brushed my wrist. Honey, all this time, we thought you needed help, that you were... She faltered, looking ashamed of the words she'd used in the past. Struggling. I know, I said. But why keep it a secret? Sarah's voice was sharper, not with anger, but with disbelief, like someone realizing they'd been walking through a house with mirrors and never once seen themselves. Why let us keep thinking we were better? I held her gaze, unblinking. Because I needed to know who you were when you thought I was less. And now I do. Her face flinched like I'd slapped her, though my voice had been calm. Dad sat back, fingers steepled, his businessman instincts finally cracking through the father mask. Sela, this level of operation, why live like you do? Why not? His eyes swept my black dress, my flat shoes, the plain clutch on the table. Show it? Because the moment people see wealth, they stop seeing you, I said. They see opportunity, or competition, or someone they can diminish to make themselves feel taller. I let my eyes rest briefly on Sarah before shifting back to Dad. I prefer clarity. Sarah's breath hitched. Clarity? I nodded. For 3 years, I've seen exactly how you treat someone you believe is beneath you. That clarity has been worth more than showing off ever could be. Kevin slumped back, shaking his head. God, I've been awful. All those jokes about your computer hobby, I don't even know what I thought I was doing. Like I was the successful one giving you crumbs of confidence. He rubbed his face hard. And you were building all this. You weren't the only one, I said softly. Sarah's laugh came out wet, almost a sob. Sela, I've been so cruel. And not even on purpose. I thought I was helping you face reality, when really... She trailed off, tears blurring her mascara. Mom squeezed my wrist tighter. Can you forgive us? There's nothing to forgive, I said, though my voice carried an edge. You acted on what you believed. But don't confuse love with respect. You love me, but you didn't respect me. Dad's mouth opened, then closed again. Finally, he exhaled through his nose. We treated you like a child. You treated me like a failure, I corrected gently. There's a difference. The words hung heavy, undeniable. Marcus returned then, his timing eerily precise, carrying a silver tray with a bottle of champagne and 6 flutes. He set them down with care. "Compliments of the house," he said smoothly. "Also, Ms. Voss, the Henderson wedding party has expanded their guest list. They'll need the grand ballroom and additional catering. It's an added $30,000 in expenses, but the client approved full coverage. Shall I authorize?" I didn't blink. "Yes, proceed." Marcus inclined his head, poured the champagne expertly, and slipped away. Dad picked up his glass slowly, eyes on me. This time there was no calculation, no sermon, only something raw. "Selah," he said, his voice rough, "I owe you a toast. To the daughter who built something extraordinary, while her family was too blind to see it." His eyes swept the table. "And to the family we will be from now on, one that asks instead of assuming, that celebrates instead of condescending, that respects instead of patronizing." Mom lifted her glass, eyes brimming. Kevin followed, shame still heavy but genuine. Even Sarah, mascara streaked, raised hers with trembling fingers. "To Selah," Dad said. The crystal chimed. I raised my own glass and touched it gently to theirs. The champagne was bright and sharp on my tongue, like something cutting loose inside me. For the first time in years, I wasn't just sitting at the table, I belonged at it. Later, as plates cleared and conversation softened, Sarah leaned close, her perfume sharp and floral. Her voice was low, private. "Selah, I need to ask you something. When I offered to get you entry-level jobs, when I treated you like you were less, did you think I was being cruel on purpose?" I studied her, mascara streaks, eyes red-rimmed, her bravado stripped bare. "No," I said at last. "I think you were being human. The problem wasn't your intent, Sarah. The problem was you never asked what I actually needed." She nodded, tears welling again. "I'm going to do better. We all will, I swear." I searched her face, looking for the familiar mask of superiority. This time I didn't see it. And for the first time, I almost believed her. We drifted from the dining room into the Grand Metropolitan's lobby, a space designed to make ordinary people stand straighter. Marble gleamed under the glow of chandeliers, the air fragrant with polished wood and expensive cologne. Guests moved like choreography, check-ins, luggage wheels humming, staff anticipating needs before they were voiced. My family looked around with new eyes. Sarah's gaze caught the concierge desk, where attendants bowed slightly as I passed. Kevin lowered his phone, unusually silent, as if the glass and stone were whispering things he'd missed for years. Mom trailed her fingers along the railing, awe flickering with something else, regret. Dad adjusted his tie, his jaw tight, the weight of calculation still grinding behind his eyes. Marcus reappeared, tablet in hand, his expression discreet but intent. "Ms. Voss, the Henderson wedding expansion has been processed, ballroom secured, catering adjustments approved, staffing has been doubled for tomorrow's schedule." His eyes flicked to me alone, respectful. 30,000 additional, all cleared. I nodded. "Good. Thank you, Marcus." He inclined his head and vanished as swiftly as he'd come, leaving behind the echo of numbers too large for my family to absorb. $30,000, authorized in less than a minute. The figure hung in the air like incense, impossible to ignore. At the revolving doors, our group slowed, reluctant to split the night in two. Dad turned toward me, and for once the iron in his voice had melted. He pulled me into an embrace that felt nothing like the stiff, pitying hugs of past holidays. His arms were heavy, sure, warm with something I hadn't recognized from him in years. Respect. "I should have said this a long time ago," he murmured near my ear. "I'm proud of you, Selah, not for what you've built, though God knows it's astonishing, but for doing it when we never gave you credit." "Thank you," I whispered. Mom hugged me next, softer, eyes glistening. "We were so busy worrying about who you weren't that we never saw who you were." Kevin lingered, awkward, then pulled me close. His voice cracked. "I've been such a jerk. I thought mocking you was harmless, like teasing a little sister who'd never catch up, but you were miles ahead and I didn't see it." "Now you do," I said. Sarah stood apart, arms folded as if to hold herself together. When she finally stepped forward, her hug was tight, desperate, clinging. "I don't know how to undo the things I've said," she admitted into my shoulder, "but I'll try. That's all I ask." When we pulled apart, Marcus was there again, as if the building itself had summoned him. "Ms. Voss, your car service is waiting at the front entrance. I've also arranged for your family's parking fees to be waived." He offered the faintest of smiles, then melted back into the staff's perfect rhythm. Outside, the city lights stretched across the boulevard, reflected in the glossy black sedan idling at the curb. My family shuffled toward their cars, but Dad paused, turning back to me once more. His face was gentled, stripped of its usual armor. "This doesn't fix the past," he said, "but I promise you, we'll be different from now on." I nodded. Then maybe we still have a future. One by one, they drove off into the night. I stood under the glittering awning, the hotel humming behind me, and exhaled. For years, family dinners had been gauntlets I endured. Tonight, for the first time, I felt something else. Possibility. My phone buzzed. A new message from Sarah. "Would you have time for coffee this week? Not to advise you, to actually listen. I want to understand what you do. Really understand." I smiled at the glow of the screen. I'd like that. Maybe, just maybe, the next family meal would be one between equals. The cafe Sarah chose was small, tucked on a quiet corner, far from the gleam of the Grand Metropolitan. Morning light poured through wide windows, catching on silver teaspoons, and the gentle steam curling above cups. It wasn't a place for displays, and maybe that was why she picked it. She was already seated when I walked in, hair pulled back, makeup softer than usual. The woman who used to weaponize perfume and pearls looked stripped down, almost uncertain. She rose when she saw me. "Sela?" Her voice carried none of the sharpness I'd grown used to. I sat, the chair legs scraping softly against tile. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then Sarah inhaled, as if bracing herself. "I don't know how to start. Everything I said at that dinner, the way I've spoken to you for years, it's echoing in my head, and I feel sick." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic mug in front of me. "Then maybe this is the place to stop echoing and start asking." She flinched, then nodded. "Okay, then tell me, what do you actually do? Not the cover story, not the polite deflections, the truth." So I told her, carefully but without apology, how the first property had come through a quiet sale no one else wanted, how I used my design work as a cloak while I built the bones of something bigger, how the expansion had been calculated risk stacked on discipline. Her eyes widened, then softened as I described boardrooms, zoning battles, sleepless nights negotiating contracts while everyone assumed I was designing logos. "You hid it so well," she whispered. "I wasn't hiding," I corrected. "I was protecting, until I knew who I could trust." Her lip trembled. "And you couldn't trust us." "Not with respect," I said. "Love, yes, but not respect." She pressed her palms flat on the table, blinking back fresh tears. "I was so sure I was ahead. And the truth is," she gave a humorless laugh, "that BMW lease I bragged about, I can barely make the payments. The condo, just a dream. I built a version of myself that looked impressive, but it's fragile." She met my eyes, unguarded. "What I envied in you wasn't the money. It was the steadiness, the calm. I mistook it for weakness, when really it was strength." For a long moment, we sat in that raw space between confession and forgiveness. My phone buzzed against the table. Kevin. A photo he'd posted. Our family at the Grand Metropolitan, glasses raised, smiles real for once. The caption read, "Family isn't about who shines the brightest. It's about learning to see each other in the right light." I slid the phone across for Sarah to see. She smiled faintly, eyes damp. "Even Kevin's changing." "Maybe we all can," I said. Mom texted later that afternoon, suggesting next Thanksgiving be at home again. Everyone cooking, no chandeliers, no hierarchies. "Even if it means the turkey's too dry, it will be ours," she wrote. I let myself smile. As Sarah stirred the last of her coffee, she reached across the table, her hand tentative. "Sela, I don't expect instant forgiveness, but I want to build something new with you. No more patronizing, no more assumptions, just honesty." I placed my hand over hers. "Then let's start there." Outside, morning light spilled across the street, catching in a teaspoon on the empty table beside us. It flashed like a tiny chandelier, humbler than the Grand Metropolitan's, but just as bright. I realized then that reconciliation isn't a grand gesture. It's a series of small, steady choices. And for the first time, I wanted to make them, with all of them.